Welcome to the City of Pasco City Council Workshop meeting of whatever days today still is, January 27, 2025. We are going to go ahead and skip ahead to item number 4, which is verbal reports from council members, and then we will get into the bulk of our business. Do we have any reports from any council members? Seeing none, we will slide into item number 5, which is items for discussion with opportunity for public comment. Just a reminder, as you see from the light, we do now offer public comment during these workshop meetings, which is a total of 8 minutes, up to 2 minutes of 2 comments for either side. In other words, up to 2 2-minute comments, pro or con. So with that, the first item we're going to get is our presentation for Columbia Ability Alliance. We're going to get Mr. Lincoln to kick this off to Mr. Novakovic.
So we've got Mr. Michael Novakovic here this evening, who is short a drum kit, but did bring cookies. I've known Michael for a long time, since I've been in the community, and always been a fan of his. But one of the things that he's introduced me to is all the services that the Columbia Ability Alliance offers, and he can run through the plethora. They are entrepreneurial. They have many different lines of business, and they serve a community who is in need, and they help many people in our community. So with that, please give us your presentation, sir.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. So, Council, thank you so much for giving me some time this evening. Super excited to be here. I've got a couple members of our executive team here. Kim Parrott. Kim, give the parade wave. She is our CFO. She is also our interim COO. And right next to her is Sherry Monty. She's our Director of HR. So, am I to advance this? There we go. All right. I've got a brief video I want to show you. It kind of highlights everything we are. We are a really unique organization, as Adam mentioned. Going on under our roof. As you would have seen, we're a social enterprise, really a small conglomerate. We're a nonprofit that owns 3 for-profit businesses that help fund our 5 nonprofit mission services. And since 1963, we've been breaking down barriers to employment and social inclusion for individuals with disabilities and other life barriers. I think you're going to find, as we're talking tonight, that at least 3 of your goals, quality of life, safety, and economic vitality, there's work that we're doing in that space. We already do some partnership with the City of Pasco, and I'm going to plant some seeds because I think there's a lot more that we could be doing. I'm not going to get into this, but we did rebrand last year from CI. We rode that horse since 1981 to Columbia Ability Alliance. Prior to that, we were the United Cerebral Palsy Association of Benton and Franklin Counties. One of the things that we've been doing since we opened our doors is employment services. So what we'll do is we have contracts with Benton and Franklin County and the state of Washington to provide employment services to individuals with disability for community-based employment. So we'll work with these individuals to understand what their wants, wishes, and desires in terms of employment is, their skills and abilities. We'll work on skills development. We'll do job search, resume writing, mock interviews so they can be successful in landing a job. And then we work with area employers on job placement. As an example of what this looks like, anybody been to Wingstop Pasco? Yeah, they have 9 individuals with disabilities, and 8 of them are clients. They built a business model around this, and that place is popping. The thing that's really cool is if you look at, there's a wealth of research out there that shows that businesses that are socially conscious, that bring on individuals with disabilities, flourish in a variety of ways. It enhances workplace culture, which aids in retention and recruitment of talent. Their morale goes up, customer experience is enhanced, and the lifetime value of a customer is increased, meaning customers stay loyal and spend more money. As we talk about economic development, there's some great opportunities. When people look to us as an agency, when you look at some of these larger operations, Amazon certainly, but Dairy Gold, they're looking for workforce. And it can be hard to come by. We're an alternate source of workforce development. And what can happen, particularly with some of these larger entities, they'll come into a community, they'll actually take employees out of hospitality. And as you're going to see, we partner in the hospitality space too. So there's a lot we can do in that space to add value. The other thing I would mention, when I was in healthcare, I was a healthcare exec, we would partner with Lords and Pasco, Lords and Trios and Cadillac. We'd bring in one of our docs and we'd work to recruit physicians to our community, surgeons in particular. Those surgeons would want to know about this much about our healthcare capabilities, or at least that's how much conversation we'd have. They'd want to know a lot about it, but they'd done their research. What they really wanted to know from us is, can I live here? And what the things that they would ask about, of course, they want to know if they're good places to eat and entertainment. What are the schools like, and are there supportive services like the ones that we offer? About 14% of our population has a disability. So because of that, there's a great opportunity for us to attract talent to our communities, but also retain talent as well. Opportunity Kitchen. Hopefully Chef Derek did an all right job with the cookies if you got into those. This is our free 12-week kitchen training program. We train front and back of house, and we train up baristas as well. We work not only with individuals with disabilities, but people from other marginalized communities. So this could be a veteran with PTSD, and this has been a barrier to employment. Could be somebody formerly incarcerated and they're looking for a second chance. And we've had great success there too, actually mitigating recidivism, where we've seen a generational change of incarceration literally broken down because somebody found purpose and career aspirations. The same is true with individuals with substance use disorder. We work with individuals in this space for great success. We have a partnership that's undergoing right now or underway to work with the Recovery Center to provide our Opportunity Kitchen program there, not only to provide meals, but also training for people when they're in the appropriate point of the recovery. Our intent is to build a healthier community and a safe community in that space as we work with these individuals to be successful when they exit. One of the things that we do is we provide soft skills development, so transferable skills, the things that allow any of us to be successful in any relationship, including the workplace. So we're excited about this. Another avenue for us, Michelle Whitney, Superintendent Pasco Schools, is on my board of directors. Before she joined my board, about a year and a half ago, we had a conversation about working with the youth within the schools. And we do a little work in this space. We have a school to work program, but we talked about Opportunity Kitchen and providing individuals with disabilities this opportunity to come through our program. Here's where it gets pretty cool. This could be tied back to STEM credits, so there's units of weights and measures. There is thermodynamics that happen in the kitchen. But even better than this, when I was talking to Michelle, she had mentioned that they often are looking for individuals for their food services. These are union jobs with benefits, so there's a great avenue for career endeavors for the people that we work with if we can find our way to opening that program up. So that's something that we're exploring. Our community center is our center for respite care. It's an adult day program. So when you think about caregivers with individuals with disabilities, many of the people we work with are working full time. So they need a place that's safe and secure that they can bring their loved one. There's a real risk of caregiver burnout if they can't take a break, go run an errand, visit a doctor. And if they're not healthy, they're not going to be taking care of this individual in their life. And it can lead to institutionalization, and it's not something that we want to see happen. So we're here, we're providing exceptional service. Our clients come in and it's life-enriching activities. So we partner with many agencies and entities around the Tri-Cities to do some really cool programming, like Mid-Columbia Libraries, the National Park Service, Ted Brown Music Company comes in and does a drum circle. I've actually hauled my drum set down there and rocked out with them. It was pretty cool. But we also do things like cooking classes, fitness classes, commerce. There's an opportunity for our clients to use money. But we also go out into our community to have experiences, so events and festivals, and the things that you and I have ready access to that many people we work with do not. So we'll even come and check out the CPC Co-Planetarium. So a lot of great things happening in this space. And then we run 3 federal contracts. They're called Ability One contracts. They're actually built to support individuals with disabilities. So while our focus is on community-based employment, back when we were CI years ago, we used to be the employer of individuals with disabilities, hundreds of individuals. Now our industry model, and this is across the nation, demonstrates best practices out in the community. However, we run some small group-supported employment contracts. One of them is at the Richland Federal Building. We have 14 individuals there. Almost all of them have a disability. They've been providing grounds maintenance services and janitorial for over 30 years very successfully. We also have a mobile janitorial crew where we're doing, we've got a couple of additional people employed doing commercial work. My hope is that with the Recovery Center, we can actually take this program over there as well, not only just to take care of the building and the grounds, but to use it as a training opportunity. And an opportunity for us would be with the grounds maintenance. Maybe it's seasonal work with Pasco Parks and Rec. So this is how this could become something that creates sustainable employment or can put somebody on a path to career success. We're excited about that, developing that further. And then solutions, another one of these federal contracts. We actually produce we have 5 clients that punch in as staff of ours. It's a federal contract, so they're making solid wages. Last year, they produced 125,000 pieces of PPE. They're welding hood socks that go underneath the welding hoods for the U.S. Navy, for the naval shipyards in Bremerton, Washington. So these individuals are taking care of the men and women that are taking care of you and I, and it's pretty exciting. The revenues generated from this help to support our community center. And then finally, we have 3 for-profit businesses. CI Information Management, you most likely know it as CI Shred. Roundtable Pizza, we own all 4 of the local stores, including one right here in Pasco. And then Paradise Bottled Water. Collectively, those businesses help to support what we do, and our teams, along with many partnerships, are building a more accessible and inclusive community for everybody to enjoy, tying it back to quality of life. And as I mentioned, there's safety endeavors in there, and we're certainly in the economic development space in terms of workforce development. That is what I had for you. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I always got to give it to you, man. Coming up here with no notes. You always bring the heat. So, I was told by Skip I was supposed to bust your chops.
Oh, no.
I don't know that I can after that. So, no, seriously, you are such an asset to our community. And I love the passion you bring. I mean, when it was Visit Tri-Cities, now with this, to just expanding the footprint of the Tri-Cities and the people we serve, just bringing the community back. So, I mean, I really appreciate, your mission, your friendship, and your love for the community, man. So I'll just say that. Maybe Mr. Harpster will rake you over the coals and meeting. So stay tuned.
Perfect.
Like Mayor Serranos, I really appreciate your guys' mission and the work that you're doing in the community. One thing I'll mention is your LinkedIn page that I followed for quite a while is a really great page that I would encourage everybody to follow. And
thank you.
Great posts on there, really inspiring posts, and so doing a good job with that. And then a shout out to Roundtable Pizza. Anytime we order pizza, we always order from Pasco Roundtable. So there you go.
Thank you.
The only question I have is, besides those 3 for-profit businesses, what are your other main sources of revenue that keep things going for you guys?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So philanthropy is part of that. Grants are rolled up into that. With several of our operations, we have contracts. So like the employment services with Benton Franklin County, Walla Walla County too. I don't know that I mentioned that, in Washington State. So that's big for us. Some of the community center, there's private pay, but there's also government contracts that help we have government contracts, but there's government support for some of the people that we work with. We actually subsidize that incredibly, and this is where the community generosity plays in. We try to stretch people's dollars out, whether it's private pay or if they've got some government funding, so they can get greater service. So it's kind of that 3-legged stool. We've got these contracts, we've got our for-profit businesses, but then we've got our community that's highly supportive of the work we do. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further lights. Thank you for your time. Appreciate the presentation.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to go hit Treos Tacos. You guys have a good evening.
Have a great night. Thank you all of you for the supporting cast as well. Do we have any public comment on this issue? Going once. I got a hand up. Oh, sorry. That was Chief waving. Sorry. Sorry. My bad. Just couldn't see through the folks getting up. Going twice. Third time. With that, we'll move on to item B, which is development fees review, and that's going to be you, Deputy City Manager Sigdell.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Definitely a hard job to follow Mr. Novakovic. He's always such a great speaker. It's a little bit of a boring subject, but one that you have been waiting patiently for a very long time. We're here to talk about simplification of our development fees. There's a whole lot of development fees, and what we try to do with this presentation is try to simplify it, and I say that to say it does not include everything, but we're trying to do as much of apples-to-apples comparisons between the cities, and sometimes when you add too much, you lose track of what the real issues are. Next slide, please. So many different fees type. Next slide. Building fees. So once you're ready to actually build the home or the structure, you have building permits, some state fees, plan review of those building, and impact fees, which would be school, park, transportation. There's also other fees that kind of comes into play that I've not included here. One that comes to mind is a boulevard maintenance fee. If your development is right next to a boulevard that the city is going to be maintaining for perpetually for future, there's a one-time fee connected to that, though it is not an impact fee. And then there's connection fees for our utilities. So there's right now water, sewer, and the one that we're talking about and doing the outreach on irrigation as well. But it's not included here because at this time we do not have an irrigation connection fee. Next slide, please. There's also planning fees depending on what you're doing. There could be fees for binding site plan, SEPA, boundary line adjustments, short plat, final plat, rezones, things like that. But the one that we are talking about today are what we call development fees, which feels like a misnomer because everything is a development fee, but this is kind of how internally we think about it. But essentially it's a public infrastructure inspection. So the best way to educate myself, I found thinking about this particular issue today as when you build a home, there's the building permit and plan review of that home. However, there's a lot that needs to happen off-site of that home, and that's where the development fees come into place. How do the roads get to it? How do the utilities get to that home? And what are the city's requirements? So those are what we're going to be talking about today. Next slide, please. So overall, Council has had an interest in looking at how we stack up against some of our neighbors. And so we're trying to make some comparisons here. Again, not complete, but close enough for you to all get an idea. What we did is we separated some of the building permits, impact fees, and utility connection fees in one place, and then development review fees a little bit separately. So for a home with the valuation and the size and the frontage that is listed there, City of Pasco and impact fees and connection fees, City of Pasco comes to about $12,000. City of Kennewick comes to about $10,000, Richland at $16,000, and West Richland nearly $20,000. So we're kind of plucking a home and then trying to make our best apples to apples comparison. This also includes our school impact fee, which the city does not retain. That goes to our schools, but the city does collect the school impact fees as a part of our permitting process. And Pasco School District will be coming to council here on April 14th to give an update on that impact fee. And we do expect it to have some changes to that. At some point, we're not exactly sure when, but we'll be hearing from the school district about it. Next slide, please. With development review fees, this is where we differ significantly from our neighbors, and this is the part that staff has been working with developers. We've had 2 listening sessions and then 1 more scheduled, I believe, for this week or next week. And in those listening sessions, there's a few things that have come up over and over again. And what we're trying to do is complete things, not just listen for feedback, but actually do something with it. SEPA threshold increase is number 1 issue. Online application, online payments, there's a huge level of inconvenience for our customers when they have to come across the town to pay for something, and sometimes the fees is a little bit different than maybe what was communicated. And this is 2025, so it feels like we are far behind on that. So that's a service that we do need to provide. The other issue that has been a big one and has come up multiple times, is how unpredictable this development review fee is. And it is unpredictable. As you can see here, comparatively, we are the cheapest. But I can say that, but it could be wrong. And the reason I say that, and this is how unpredictable it is, the reason I say that is because we have a planned review fee and we have an inspection fee. And it's an hourly fee based on the staff. So you could have a staff member who is starting their first day at City of Pasco, and they're still getting familiar with our codes, they're still getting familiar with the city. How much they charge the project is very different than somebody who's seasoned and is familiar and has been trained. And so it varies. Additionally, the feedback from our customers has been that we bill on a regular basis as the work is done, so on a monthly basis, really. And so it feels like the invoices keep coming. And what happens when you are doing a development project, or really any project, is you start with a budget. But the way that our fees are, it is hard to know what that budget should be when our neighbors have a fixed fee that you have an idea of what exactly that number is, you pay that, and you're done with it. So this has been a feedback of it is really hard to budget for this specific item at the City of Pasco. And one thing that we've heard, next slide please. One more. One thing that we've heard on a regular basis is how, if there was a preference on what we would adopt, that the City of Kennewick had a really good structure that they would like for us to follow. Some of the drawbacks, I've talked about the drawbacks for our customers, but there is also a significant drawback to how we do things for staff. In that we're spending a lot of time on a non-value added tasks. So I'll just kind of go through the process. Number one, every time I'm working on a project, I have to track it, and then I have to put it in the timesheets, and I have to make sure I got it all right, so that takes time. Then I have to prepare that, send it off to somebody to bill it. That person has to collect everything, make sure that we're doing a full bill, so they have to kind of pull that report and then prepare that invoice. Then there's postage, there's envelopes, there's paper that has to go out. And then there's questions of, why are you billing me every month? I thought I paid for this last time. Who's doing what? And so that takes time. And then there's actual processing of the checks that comes every time. If I remember from my time in finance department, processing a check takes about $50, $60, which is significant amount of money, and it is not adding any value to our customers. In fact, it is a billing structure that they're asking us to revise. So we do believe that if we change this, there's going to be some capacity to actually for us to be able to help our staff, our customers, on things that they actually need help with, not spending time on billing and postage and things like that. Next slide, please.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
I want to wait to that.
Yeah, I think it might be appropriate to just pop in with questions on
Sure.
the slide. If that's okay, Ms. Abdel. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. The question I had was, are a lot of these numbers, say 1 million, or whatever the cost of the development, is that self-reported, right, from the developer?
Usually those are the bids.
Do we ever verify, that they're submitting the correct amount? Are we ever double checking to make sure? What if someone came in, my development's 5 mil, but it was 10 mil?
There is a process that other cities use, and so we would adopt something very similar.
What is that? Just briefly, what kind of process is that?
Go ahead.
So what I've seen is a specific price per square foot used for type of development. So if it's commercial, retail, it's a certain price per square foot, and it's applied regardless of the self-reported dollar amount.
Thank you.
Good, Ms. Sigdell.
So I went ahead of myself a little bit here, but we did provide different structures, and I apologize, this particular slide is a little bit unclear, but it does give you what a review fee and an inspection fee would be for each of our comparable cities. And essentially, the most ideal, as we've heard from our customers, would be with the city of Kennewick, which would be 5% of the cost for anything under $1 million, and 3% of the construction cost for over $1 million. And that would include both the review fee and the inspection fee for the project. Next slide, please. Next slide. So overall, we are recommending that we adopt City of Kennewick's structure, and we can definitely come back to you with what that exact process looks like in terms of verification of that construction cost. Next slide, please. And really the advantage of this change is that we need to, when we ask for feedback, we need to be listening and implementing things. And so part of that is the feedback from the development community. It is the most predictable. It's also allows for us to create some capacity without adding additional staff and do value-added work. And I also want to add that any fees that we receive, they are restricted revenues. So you cannot just use that for anything. It has to be reinvested in this process. And council did ask, does this team need more people? And the answer is yes. There are things that we need, especially what we've identified is for major projects. We need somebody who is assigned to major projects, who can help our customers navigate the process that can be lengthy and complicated throughout from the beginning to end. So there's a continuity of that one person, and they're looking over and making sure that everything is working together. We do not have a position like that, though other cities do, and so we could really benefit from that. There's other things that this is a team that needs more people investment, but we're also trying to be mindful of budget as well. So any additional revenue that we might get from this change, we would be reinvesting back, and we would be coming back to council with maybe in a year or so and say, okay, we're seeing additional revenues. Can we use it for XYZ? The drawback is that we do believe the development review fees will increase from this change. And with that, this is kind of the first go around, and we're open for any questions that you might have, any concerns. And once we have the consensus from council, we will then start working on changing our software, communicating with our customers, and then coming back to you with an ordinance that would make the necessary changes.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and kick it off. Oh, Mr. Grimm, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. No, Ms. Sigdell, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the oversized side-by-side. It really did help put things in perspective and make it easy to compare and everything like that. Appreciated, and I just want to thank you and Mr. Lincoln and the rest of staff for bringing this back. This is one of our goals kind of that we had at the beginning, to streamline and update this. And I see, some of the things you've spoken to as far as adding predictability to the process and streamlining it. And I love the phrase customer, because it always reminds us that we are serving the public and doing it. And and I see even in the funds here how some of these are probably overdue to be updated. And even it's hard for it not to stand out to me, but when I was looking at the development fees, pardon me, I had that up here at some point, but just subtracting the $4,700 for even the school impact fee, I think in my notes here, I saw the fee went all the way down to $7,480, which is significantly less than some of the, our neighboring municipalities. And it does make it difficult for us to provide services to our citizens, whether it be public works, police, fire, or even Parks and Rec, some of the other things we do, when the constraints are so tight. So I know there is kind of a give and take where, there is going to be felt added increase in some of this, but at the same time, the feedback that you have spoken to us loud and clear about is adding the predictability, adding the streamline, and then, just the cumbersome process of billing and all that kind of stuff. So, yes, I guess my one question I have for you, Ms. Sigdell, is when do you anticipate this being done or ready to go?
I need to talk with our IT department. They're very capable, but it would just be a change to our code. I do not want to overpromise and underdeliver. But what I can say is it will not be coming back next week, for sure. We need to do a little bit of work. I would also like to do a little bit more outreach and communication to give people heads up that this is coming. So maybe in a month or so, we can bring this back.
Okay, well, thank you again for your work on it. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Mr. Harpster.
Yeah, first off, I did not mean to laugh that loud. I have several miscellaneous comments and then some specific slide comments. One thing that we may have discussed before, but that I think we should take a look at is there's some fees in the code, like boulevard maintenance fee, like you mentioned, that I don't remember exactly what it reads, but it reads something in the code like will be determined during the platting process. So stuff like that where it's like, well, what does that mean? So providing, again, more clarity and predictability with specific fees like that would be great. I just don't want that specific one to get overlooked. Again, you mentioned on one of the slides designated zones for traffic impact fees like Kennewick and Richland have. I think that would be super helpful, both for the city to collect more revenue, but also for developers that can. City of Richland has a map with I think 5 different TIF zones, and you can click on the zone, see what the per lot fee is, multiply it, and there's your number. And so something like that is super helpful to work towards. And then, like Mr. Grimm mentioned, we're already really competitive as far as our fees go with the school impact fee. We're not the most, but if we're able to get that off of there, if you take that off of there, just doing the math, then we become really competitive, which is great. But I also, even if we're the most expensive, as long as we can justify it accurately and make it predictable to our developers, know what the fees are going to be. I've got the unique opportunity of being part of some of the developer listening sessions, and I really think what was coming across to me a lot was predictability. Even if it's the highest, as long as we can predict it and account for it, so then when that developer makes an offer on a piece of property, they know all of their fees and what it's going to be, and that I think would help so much. I'd be more focused on predictability instead of just slashing fees and all that, especially given conversation over the last 6 months of our budget and increased revenue needs. And then another thing you mentioned, value-added services. I'm excited to see what the lean processes are able to do with this department specifically. Like you mentioned, the $50 to process a check is just crazy. On the drawback slide, I think this is it, maybe. Increasing review fees. Yeah, okay. What percent do we anticipate review fees are going to rise, or are we not really at that point yet?
We did not do that math because this area, it really depends on what type of projects you're getting and whether it's industrial, commercial, what's the peak and the valley. So we've not gotten to that level yet. And part of that is I could give you a range, and I do not know that range as we speak, but even when we do the math, we cannot quite predict what it's going to be. That's why we need about a year to figure out where things end up before we even say let's reinvest it back. Sorry, it's kind of a non-answer, but that's where we're at right now.
Okay, the alternative fee structures slide, which talks about the construction costs and value, is that the cost of the construction project and doing the plan review fee at the beginning, is that cost as determined by the applicant or as determined by the city?
Usually it is determined by the applicant, but then the city is doing its validation. I do not know exactly how this process works, so I can come back to you on that. Oh, do we have, sorry. I will come back to you on that.
Okay. That was just my only point with that is a lot of times when plans get submitted to the city, at the same time they're being submitted to the contractor for a bid or proposal.
Yeah.
And so it'd be hard to submit it with an anticipated cost when that cost is still being figured out at the same time, you know.
Yeah.
And then, surprise, surprise, I don't necessarily like the idea of hiring more staff members. And so before we get to that conversation, it would be, and I know we're not there yet, so I didn't expect to see it tonight, but once we get close to that, seeing exactly what a new position, what their tasks would entail.
Yeah.
And where that value would be realized. And then one other point that was mentioned in the agenda report at the beginning was charging the fees at the beginning of the review process. I think we should really look into charging those at the end. There's scope changes throughout the duration of a project where PRV might be added to the plans, and that's going to increase the cost and thereby the fees. And then another time, for cash flow purposes, it's easier to pay those fees at the end, like a water rights fee. That's a condition of final plat. And so I think with those types of fees, it would be easy enough to make it a condition of final plat to where the city's still going to earn that revenue just towards the end, which I think is helpful for everybody. And again, in the end, the city still collects the same amount of revenue. So just a thought on that. And then lastly, one of the last slides that spoke to revenue generated from development fees not being used to cover specific development related items. In the agenda report, it said if additional revenue materializes, reinvesting these funds into improving processes would be transformational for staff efficiency, morale, customer service. So I just want to make sure I understand the funds, the potential increased funds earned by the city can't be used for development related costs, but they can be used for, say, employees in CED?
No, I might have put a not in there by mistake. They can only be used for development-related activities. So with that money, you cannot hire a deputy city manager, but you can hire somebody who is a project manager for development projects, or who is a development review tech, and they have to be dedicated to very specific development review activities only, that is as described by state law. And so it cannot even be a process like SEPA. And so there are some very specific things that, so essentially it is kind of making sure that the fees that are collected for development are used for development activities only.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm rereading the staff report. It is clear in there. I just kind of read it backwards. I did read it 3 times, but obviously got it wrong every time. So that's all I have. Thanks.
There's few things that, since we're having the conversation, I would like to mention it so you're all aware. With the boulevards, we are working on it. We are under contract to not just look at the fees and provide clarity on the fees, but also standards, because that is something that is a feedback that we've received on exactly the standards. It's also feedback from the developers, but then also from staff as well, because sometimes staff is not aware of where things are at because things are being done differently, and they're having to maintain it for many years to come. So we're working on that. Hopefully we'll have that out to you in the next 3 months. On the TIF district, that is exactly the path that we're going to be taking, of creating different districts, because each district has different transportation needs. And so that's the direction for our consultant Fear and Peers as we're moving through that transportation impact fee process. And then, never mind, I forgot the third one.
I did have one more comment. With hiring a hearing examiner, is he billing on an hourly basis for each meeting each month?
Yes.
The one thing that I've thought about that I think would be helpful for the city for increasing revenue is generally an item at a hearing examiner meeting is 15 minutes, say. And so and I don't even know if this is possible, I'm just throwing this out there from maybe some research from staff, but if a hearing examiner meeting goes for several hours, it would be nice to be able to capture back some of that revenue, not capture back some of that revenue, but that expense that we've now spent on a meeting that should have been 15 minutes and was instead multiple hours. That doesn't only eat up the time of the hearing examiner plus his travel costs on that, but staff time spent here going through that meeting. And so just another way where, and not just with hearing examiner, but throughout the entire development process, if we were able to somehow say, a typical pre-plat of X number of lots is going to take this much staff time, and somebody else, some other applicant takes quadruple that, some way to ensure that the city's at least getting compensated for this just kind of dragging on. So just some food for thought.
Anything else, Mr. Officer?
Nope, thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'll just kind of wrap this up and then we'll move along, unless anyone else lights up. I like the presentation. I like the notion of trying to bring us back into par with the other cities. And again, this is kind of me taking what was said in the presentation, what I read. I think we need to maybe hone in on charges based on square footage, which still retains the predictability. But I mean, $1 million project today is not $1 million project 10 years ago, and it certainly won't be in 10 years. I mean, who knows what inflation will or won't do. I mean, seen crazy stuff moving by the feds, right, for the past several quarters. So I guess that's a simple way of saying I think we can maintain the predictability that's sought by the development community by targeting square footage, and maybe we base it on kind of what $1 million commercial square, what that would look like. So it's near equivalent, but maybe not the same. And again, if square footage changes because of market value or whatever external or internal factors, we still have a way to be fair and equitable without just saying arbitrary. I mean, maybe it's not arbitrarily, but arbitrarily it's $1 million and this is where you are. So I think it should be based on the building itself. That's really my key thing. Everything else has been said here. I love the notion of trying to utilize technology to streamline and cut costs. The term revenue was used a lot, and it's good for the city. But again, this is partially driven, as I understand, by the development community. So those who would create this revenue are also seeking kind of partnership, if you will. So for anyone listening that may take this as the city's looking for a money grab, that's not the notion here. Certainly we want to come on par with our neighboring cities of the Tri-City, but we also want to be predictable and hopefully become as lean as possible in providing, articulable services and not capturing in-house costs. So I think I just want to convey that notion of this presentation. With that, I see no further lights. Do we have any public comment on this issue? Go for it. You got your whole 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Sorry I didn't have anything planned, but I've had an opportunity to discuss this with some developers in the past. And one missing element is the actual cost of the homeowner here. I think it'd be really valuable to talk about the property taxes as well, because everything gets paid for. It just depends on how it's paid for. If it's paid at the front end with development fees or impact fees, or paying by higher property taxes. In the past, I've spoken with my friends across the river, and their property taxes are aggressively higher than ours are. So I think that's one thing that's sort of a missing element. And another note, I do have a planting strip in front of my house. It was put there probably about 110 years ago, and the city doesn't come and mow mine. So I think that'd be just good to keep in mind how long these developments are going to be there. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Ms. Sigdahl.
I would just like to say that a lot of this work was done by our management analyst, Samantha McCants. And I spoke here as if I did most of the work, but I do want to give credit where credit is due. So if Samantha is watching, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do we have any additional public comment on this issue? Going once, going twice, third time. So with that, thank you to Samantha. We will move along to item C, which is monthly update transportation impact fee study by Ms. Sigdell and whomever may in the ether be assisting.
There's a big team behind this, Public Works, CED, City Manager's Office, and we have a consultant, Fear and Pierce, who's working on our transportation impact fee. We have looked at all of the projects. It's been reviewed by Fear and Pierce from their lens and their expertise. We have also ran through the concepts of how our transportation impact fee project list aligns with transportation system master plan and capital facilities plan. That goes into our comprehensive plan that we're going to be preparing here soon. So we're looking at this project not just to determine a fee, but to ensure that it is fair, it is defendable, and ensuring that as we move forward and we add a whole lot of people into the city, that we have a transportation system that all of us can rely upon. So the next steps here are talking and getting feedback from council members, from small groups. It's going to be quite an investment, so some of you who have signed up, greatly appreciate it, where we will be going through the project and the scope one by one, so that, because that's the building block of this effort. The next decision after that is going to be the districts. So Fear and Pierce is the expert on this, and they will be giving us some options. And then the next step after would be kind of looking at what that number will be. We have significantly low transportation impact fee. We've not updated it since 2009. A lot has happened, and sometimes you keep the fees low to incentivize growth, but then at some point it is low enough that you're not able to maintain and or build transportation systems that are needed for the population that are residing there. So we're working through that process. The meeting for the projects is set. And we're still on track for end of March, but we also understand that this is a big one, and we will have the numbers to you very likely by end of March, and then start discussing what the path forward will be for this effort. And with that, I'm open for any questions you might have.
Excellent. Thank you for that update. Do we have any questions on this item? Mr. Prowse.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I just, if I could just be known of whatever days we're going to meet and stuff, even with the development review, if it's a small group, I would just like to sit in and, looking forward to this. We already talked about this earlier, so just want to make a note that if I would like to sit in on those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prowse. Seeing no further comments from council, do we have any public comments on this issue? Going once, going twice, third time. All right, with that, we'll move on to item D, which is resolution change order number 6, PWRF Phase 2 construction contract, excuse me, with Tapani and Director Sarah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. We are presenting to you change order number 6 for the Phase 2 of PWRF improvements. This is the winter storage ponds. This project, you may remember, is a very big project happening at our industrial facility. It was awarded to Tapani, and it is almost finished. We have a set of items that were negotiated with the contractor, and they constitute the change order that is presented to you for approval, hopefully next week. Next slide, please. So there is just a little bit left of the project to go, although we anticipate that the project won't be finished until third quarter of 2025, so that's this year. There's a lot of tedious work that needs to occur to have every pond that we have built into operation. So there is about, there are 3 ponds of just over 100 million gallons each. So that is a huge area of work. The engineer's estimate in this project was based on COVID numbers based on work that we did during COVID time. So it was pretty high. It was $45 million. The bid was very competitive. This was last year, I believe, 2023. Actually, in 2023 was awarded to Tapani, and it was awarded at $31.5 million. There's been 5 change orders to date. Some of those actually included the mitigation for owls, which were quite significant, which just could not delay the commencement of the work. So that amount of change orders, which is under 3% still for this project, you see the number is quite big, but really included some work we knew was coming, which just could not quantify or write specs for it in time for the beginning of the work that needed to occur to be able to meet other timelines and commitments with our processors. So change order number 6 is just under $150,000, and it includes a handful of items. Next slide, please. One is the extension of power to allow for controls in one of our splitter boxes. So this is a system that manages in which pond we're going to be storing water as that effluent from the processors is coming. So there was an extension that got missed in our plan, so we're just adding it. There is some additional concrete work that needs to occur to ensure that we have a concrete surface that leads to the access to our pedestrian catwalk into the pond to be able to take samples and do other things in the pond. There were some adjustments or reconciliation for final quantities on cut and fill in one of our parcels. And finally, the contractor facilitated some of the testing that was required by ecology to ensure that our ponds were lined in a manner that met the requirements of our permit. And so that additional help from the contractor to facilitate this work, which we had planned to do with our own staff, but were unable to, is also some dollar amount that we are paying the contractor. So recognizing the work, the additional work they perform. So all these items and the tax associated with them are all combined into the single change order for just under $150,000. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah. Do we have any comments on this issue? Seeing none, we won't throw any slings or arrows. We always applaud you when they're good. We won't make you the goat when they're bad. Thank you for your work and for your team's work. Do we have any public comments on this issue? Going once, going twice. So we'll move on to item E, which is making sure I didn't skip one. Resolution, acceptance of work for Road 36 Golf Course Irrigation Line Extension. Back to you, Ms. Sarah.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council members. This item is the acceptance of the work performed by Big D's construction company in the relocation of an irrigation line that comes from an FCID facility onto our golf course. So this line was previously located in airport property. The city and the airport had an agreement that dated from many decades ago, where the city was to relocate that line if the port ever needed to use that land. And so the time has come when the airport needed that land for development, and we were honoring that agreement and relocating that line. So the vast majority of the work involved the construction of a new irrigation line, and I must say this is not part of our irrigation utility. This is specific to serve the golf course. Relocating that line on Road 36 and then along the edge of Argent Road to connect to our golf course and the system that was already existing along Argent Road, which, by the way, some of that line got installed during the Argent Road improvements project. So the several phases accounted for that relocation. This was the final segment, right? Connecting the FCID facility to the Argent Road intersection with 36. Next slide, please. So there's some pictures of what the road looked before, and there was some removal of existing line in the port's property, so that you're seeing that field there, that's part of their property. Next slide, please. And then during work, pretty standard installation of pipeline. Next slide, please. And then afterwards, once everything is backfilled and paved and there are some valves we can use. Next slide, please. So numbers are very small. So the project was awarded to Big D's. There were 2 change orders. One was an addition and there was a reconciliation that trued up the quantities, resulting in a net decrease from the original contract. And ultimately, this work was for just about $148,000. And they have met all the contractual obligations, and we ask for your approval to be able to release retainage and close this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sarah. And, we will praise you now for the positive change order. Do we have any comments from council on this one? Seeing none, do we have any public comments on this issue? Going once, going twice, third. With that, we will move on to item F, which is resolution. It's a lease agreement with INATIA, or since it's all caps, INATIA Foundation for the use of city facilities, and that's going to be you, Director Rice.
Yes, Anatai, in case you're wondering. That's the pronunciation of that. So, good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, we have a resolution for your consideration for the Anatai Foundation to lease additional space at the 403 West Lewis Building, also known as the Downtown Post Office Building. The foundation currently leases office space at the same location, and this lease for additional space will co-term with the current lease. The city's real estate representative provided current market rates for the space, and those were used to determine the lease rates for this space as well. So I'm asking you tonight to consider approving this resolution at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rice. Do we have any questions or comments for this one? Mr. Prowse.
I'll go ahead and ask one. I was looking through it. So their monthly rent is like $240 or whatever. That's what they pay, but that's based off of the credit they're getting, right? I mean, that's how it's applied essentially.
This is a separate lease from their original lease. The original lease did have a credit applied based on improvements they did, but this is entirely separate. So this is just a small amount of storage space they're leasing, therefore a small amount per month. The original lease is still in effect, and they are still working off that credit, and we're tracking that as well.
Right, and so that's applied. So I guess in essence, what do they typically pay a month?
That I'd actually have to report back to you.
Right.
I don't know what the original lease payment is per month.
Okay, that's what I kind of figured. I'm like, it seems awfully small. I haven't been there in years, but I was like, that seems awfully small for, and then a credit and all that stuff. And so
Yeah, so this is solely for storage space in the basement.
Okay, appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing no further comments, I got to make the call. I see the head nod, but do we have any public comments on this issue? Going once, going twice, third time. Well, with that, that moves us into miscellaneous council discussion. Mr. Lincoln, do you have anything for us? All right. Anything from council members? Seeing Mr. Grimsley, I will call on him.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I just, wanted to just kind of follow up a little bit more, thinking about our discussion earlier. And, I guess I just wanted to say to the rest of staff how much, at least, I can't speak for everybody, but I'm sure the sentiment's similar, just how much I appreciate all of your dedication to the city. This is a different time with, Mr. Lincoln going away in a few days. And I'm sure there's, maybe a little bit of, potential anxiety and everything, but I want you to know that, at least for myself, I wouldn't have gotten involved if I wasn't trying to make Pasco the very best place to raise a family, grow a business. I'm committed to our success. And I look at Mr. Rice and I think about his tenure and the dedication in each and every one of you down there. And I just want you guys to know that I appreciate each and every one of you. We will get through this also. And I did see the chief and the lieutenant back there, and it is all of us. It's all of our dedication just to making Pasco the very best place we can. And I just want you to know that I will continue advocating for all of you guys, rooting for all of you guys, and, standing beside. And I see Mrs. Sigdell there. I know a lot kind of is on your plate in the just kind of in the interim here. And I want you to know that I know where I lead, you'll follow, and I want you to know where you lead, I will follow too. And so, you guys, we will get through this, and I just look forward to the opportunity this brings and, how great we can make Pasco. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Seeing no further lights, I will echo the sentiments. And again, Mr. Lincoln, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, to get to know your family. I do believe you will do great things out of the port. And to be clear, not knocking the current staff, but I do think that you've certainly got a vision and a knack for what they're going to need. And the interesting notion of a new commissioner out there, which I think is quite new to the entity itself. So we wish you the best. Your number's not changing, neither is mine. So, I'll be around. Just again, appreciate everything, and staff. As Mr. Grimm said, we will weather the storm, and we'll work together to make everything the best product that the citizens of Pasco and residents deserve. So with that, we have shockingly no need for another executive session. So that moves us from item number 7 to item number 8. It is 8:40 p.m. and we are adjourned. Thank you.